Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about specifically what it means to have your Mars in Leo or Mars in the 5th house. So my name is Brandon. I do astrology videos here on YouTube, and this is part of a much larger series, which I go over every single planet and every single sign, every single house, and this is the video pertaining to Mars in Leo or Mars in the 5th house. So if you have either of those placements, this video is for you. Look down the description box below and you will see timestamps for when I talk about what. So if you have your Mars in Leo or know someone with Mars in Leo, or if you have your Mars in the 5th house or know someone with Mars in the 5th house, this video is for you or for them. So feel free to check that out down there below. In addition to that, there's going to be a playlist down below where I'm going to be going through all the videos that I've already previously done. So I've done everything from house 1 to 4 and from Aries to Cancer. This is my Leo series and 5th house series. So this is where all these videos, and as those videos come out, as I keep progressively doing them, you will see more and more videos in regards to Virgo and 6th house, Libra 7th, so on and so forth. So, and if you are brand new to astrology, you're like, what is all this stuff? I don't understand any of this. I would really recommend looking down below and kind of seeing your birth chart, seeing if you have Mars in the 5th house, you have your Mars in Leo. There's a lot of lessons regarding that this video will be for you. And you'll also be able to see like your Mercury, your Moon, your Venus, all those other things too. And this video will have a lot of different stuff, as well as the whole series that I've been doing. So feel free to check out, stay around, stick around, and yeah, without further ado, let's just kind of talk a little bit about what Mars means in astrology before we kind of get into the Mars in Leo and the Mars in the 5th house. So I'll see you guys in the next part. We talk about what Mars means in astrology. Okay, so Mars in astrology is considered to be one of the more malefic planets. It's going to be one of the more difficult planets. Mars rules a lot of things like our own personal willpower, our own drive, our own ambition, our own goals, and how we set our goals and go after our goals. So Mars has a lot to do with the energy excess or the energy limits that we have within our own lives. And Mars placement by house and sign is going to dictate a lot of where that motivation is placed and what you're really trying to use your energy for on a day-to-day basis. So Mars in certain houses and Mars in certain signs is going to change the way that the individual is wanting to use their energy. And Mars in Leo and Mars in the 5th house have their very specific desires, as opposed to Mars in Cancer, Mars in Gemini, Taurus, Virgo, Libra. Any of those things are going to have very different ways of going after what they want. And so Mars has a lot of indications related to just the male kind of archetype, that yang energy, the going after what you want, going after your goals, as well as anything with motivation, anything with goal setting, physical vitality, working out, anything of that nature is also kind of related to Mars. Is a lot about moving your body and kind of getting that energy going is very much Martian. It also rules things like cuts, surgeries, any sort of like arguments, difficulties, things like that, but more on the like more personal level, because Mars is a personal planet in astrology, meaning that it kind of works more on a personality level in that regards to impact, as opposed to a bigger kind of broader scheme when it comes to outer planets like Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto that have a little bit of a bigger kind of scope of things that they really work with. The Mars is really about your own individual willpower, your drive, your ambition, why you go after what you want, when you act and how you act on things and how you react to things, and what gets you going, what motivates you, what really is something you want to fight for, because it also rules fighting, fighters, anyone that is kind of utilizing any sort of physical energy to either harm and or protect and or just defend. That's a very Martian thing too. Anything that's a warrior archetype is very Martian. So without further ado, that was kind of a lot to just kind of say about what Mars is doing in the chart. But without further ado, let's go into and talk about what it means to have Mars in the sign of Leo. Okay, so we have Mars in the sign of Leo. So Mars is all about fighting and going after what you want and how you fight for your own specific desires, what you desire, what makes you want to fight and motivate you to get up in the morning and just keep on going, right? And as we've been doing this series here with Leo, we've been seeing a lot of different things that are all about this creative process, this sort of individual that is all about wanting to show who they are. And Mars Leo is one of those placements that really wants to fight for its place in the world. And you'll see this also similarly with Mars in Aquarius, but it's fighting for its place in a different regard. And when I talk about Leo a lot, I tend to also talk about Aquarius, because it's one of those energies that is always opposite of itself. And the Leo Aquarius archetype is a lot about that, the artist and the king and the royalty is the Leo, right? And then the Aquarius is the people. the audience, the jester, the common man, right? And so when it comes to Mars in Leo, and just that Leo energy, there's a lot of desire for them to be seen for who they are, and to not really let it be something that is really worried about from the world outside of them, right? The Aquarian world, the collective social media. It's about them doing it for them, right? A lot of the time, Mars, Leo, and Leo placements in general, they do things because they want to show off who they are. They want to share their light. And that's really what Leo is all about. It's about sharing the light, giving that enthusiasm, giving that inspiration to a lot of other people. And Mars here, it almost makes that that kind of like desire to be seen a fight sometimes. And so there can definitely be a little bit of pushback that they get when they are being too loud or too much or whatever it may be. And that's kind of what you see with like the more malefic signs in the fifth house as well as in Leo, is a little bit of a difficulty with being able to stand in their own light and know when to shine their light. And Mars Leo, it also has this amazing fighter spirit for protecting its own light, protecting its own kind of center, its own inspiration, its own heart, what it loves. It's going to fight for that. And that's the thing about Leo is so heart-centered that when it really loves and it really cares, it will have so much to give, and it will fight for that. It will really fight to preserve that love, because it's a fixed fire sign. So it's going to very much, really want to consistently feed and create and feed into people, help them, inspire them, be that kind of light for others. And Mars Leo, it's a lot about that gift of being able to be someone's light, being able to fight, to show them that they can be seen as well without necessarily depleting your own light. And that's the thing that's interesting, Mars Leo. One of the things I found really interesting, I've had quite a few interactions with Mars Leo personally that I personally kind of bump up against, only because I have so much Aquarius in my chart. So there's almost this self-awareness that I think Leo placements are inherently not really supposed to have about the Aquarian side of things, the collective. It's really all about them figuring out who they are, expressing who they are, and fighting to show who they are. And when it comes to Mars Leo, one of the things that I found really interesting is I've seen Mars Leo that will fight when it's a attack on their character, when it's attack on how they're being perceived, when it's something that they care about, that they want to protect, that is important to them, then they'll do it. If it's a personal attack to them, then they'll do it. If it's something that feels like it is attacking their ego or their identity or their confidence, and it kind of is like a like hit below the belt, if you will, they will fight. They will go after what they want. They will push through. They will get a lot of things done, because at that point, it's personal. It's personal. It's about them. It's about their light. It's about their story. Now, in that same way, when it comes to Mars and Leo, if they are fighting for children or fighting for their own children, that's another thing with all these Leo placements. We really have to talk about children, because children are very much worth protecting, just point blank, period. But the Mars Leo and the Leo in fifth house series, and all of these placements really have an innate desire to really protect and fight and really support children in a lot of beautiful ways, and understand that importance of that purity of light. Because when you think about Leo, it is that purity of light, that soul that is not, damaged and hurt, and it is very pure, and it's just shining. It's beautiful. And the Mars Leo is always about really fighting to regain that, to bring that out, not only in self, but in others. And so you see a lot of Leo placements that will be like coaches for children. I said this earlier with the moon, I believe it's the moon in Aries in the fifth is a similar kind of combination, but Mars and Leo can also have this very creative drive where they want to not just protect children, but stay in contact with their own inner child and their own kind of inner world that is so beautiful and so bright and so important to share, that they're artists. They're going to be the ones that are creating the music, the teachers of all these different things. And so it's a lot about Mars Leo being able to share an experience that is beautiful to them, and share that light, and really help share their own kind of enthusiasm, their own kind of brightness and optimism and spirit, and allow people to see, hey, you can create, you can have this joy, you can have this kind of fun part of you. You know, I think Leo placements have such a interesting story, because a lot of the time people look at Leo placements and they're like, oh, they're just self-centered. And it's like, no, they're really not. They're that way because they're really trying to preserve a light in a very dark world, in a very dim and a world that tells us to not have joy, to not have, these sort of like beautiful experiences. And so Mars and Leo is almost fighting for that. They're fighting for beauty. They're fighting for their own creativity, their own individuality, their own individual light, and in turn helping other people keep that light going. And they have a really, really interesting, like I said, stubborn streak. So they could be just, fighting to maintain a light, or fighting to maintain something just because they need to just see it through to the end. That's what you see with a lot of fixed sign energy. But what's interesting is when we talk about Leo, it's really important to talk about when you take your light or your energy away from a situation. And I think that's the thing with Leo amongst all the other signs that I think is most evident, is when you take that energy away. When a Leo Mars, or Leo placement in general, but especially Leo Mars, chooses to take their energy and their light away from a situation, the person or the situation that they're taking it away from begins to crumble, because it doesn't have either the leadership that the Mars Leo was providing, or it doesn't provide like the literal light and the support and the energetic just enthusiasm and positivity that comes with Leo. So it's a lot about them being able to specifically know when to give their light to people. It's kind of what you'll see also with Saturn and Leo, but Mars and Leo is a little bit more selective on a case-by-case basis and much more personal. So you see this a lot more with their siblings, with their coworkers, with their bosses, where they have great leadership ability, 100%. Leos are one of the most prominent leaders because of the fact it's the sun. It literally leads a lot of the stuff within our solar system. And it's very important to see, as a Leo placement, the importance of your own light and your own gift of brightness and joy that you're able to give. And so Mars and Leo, it is also important to know what you're caring for and what you're creating. So there is a very creative drive, and so they need to make sure that they're not stifling that joy either, and that the people around the Mars Leo are really asking that Leo individual, especially if they have some more watery placements, to really ask them to bring that out and really inspire them to create and make art and do what lights them up. Because when a Leo placement is doing what lights it up, it is going to keep doing it. It's going to keep enjoying it. And Mars Leo needs that creative outlet, that thing that they really find joy in, that maybe their inner child never had or always had, as its kind of safe space, right? And with this too, there is also a really strong desire just to maintain that creative impulse, have fun, enjoy itself, right? It's a very life of the party energy with Leo here. But Mars here definitely can kind of be a little bit more abrasive when it is wanting to share itself and wanting to expose itself and wanting to have a good time. It can be the party planner as well. It can have a lot of party planning energy, but it also centers it around itself sometimes, which once again is where that Leo Aquarius kind of divide comes in of a lot of importance, because Mars Leo may think that it's like, oh, this is my idea, it's the best idea, it's what I want to do, it feels really good for me. But if they don't have certain placements or certain awareness of how it's perceived, then they're going to feel like they're attacked personally. Like Leos have this thing where they take a lot of things, Leo placements can take it very personally and take it in a very, not necessarily an emotional way all the time, unless it's Moon in Leo, but very much like, oh, well, there's something wrong with me. If my thing doesn't work, there's something wrong with me. If my project doesn't work, there's something wrong with me. And they can take it very, very deeply on their identity, and it'd be very deeply identified with what they are accomplished and what they have done, what they haven't done. And when those things don't work out as they plan, because maybe they were only aware of their own feelings and their own, it only brought them joy when they were creating it and they were doing it, and it wasn't necessarily with an awareness of other people. That's where there is, you'll see that kind of dissonance with the Mars Leo, where they're creating from their own space, and then it gets rejected, and then there's this like really personal like attack, and that's once again when Mars Leo will fight. When it feels like a personal attack, they're gonna go like completely in, and they're just gonna try and shine as much as they can and expose as much as they can, and kind of get within their ego, get within their kind of like their power. They're going to get within their power and say, no, this is what it is. I'm going to create what I want to create. I'm going to make a big deal out of it because I'm upset and I need to let it be known. And I need to to share that light. Once again, the Mars Leo is all about sharing light and maybe burning people through exposing too much, right? And that's where the Mars Leo can have a little bit of a difficulty, because Mars and Leo doesn't necessarily have like great dignity. It does have some support because of the fact that the sun exalts in Aries. So there is some supportive energy within that kind of way that Mars can work with the sun. But if they don't have the awareness of themselves as a Mars Leo, they can just create something and not have that awareness of the other, and then it can get kind of messy. But it's important for them to be willing to look at themselves. Like, they're constantly going to be reminded of themselves while they're doing anything. They're going to be like, well, is this affecting me? How is this affecting me? It's very selfish, and it's okay to be selfish. It really is, as Leo placements. But what's more important for the Mars Leo is to be able to sit and think about, is this feeling gonna bring me joy, right? And that's typically when they make their choices, how they make their choices. But in addition to that, making sure that they are saying and following that light and understanding that they are giving light to other people. They're sharing a big part of themselves with other people, and the power within that. And as Leo placements become more aware of their inner child, become more aware of why they're doing what they're doing and what part of them they want to show to the world, or show to whomever they're showing whatever it is to, their accomplishments to, they are going to ultimately be really successful with the more self-awareness that the Leo placements are given. And so also too, of course, you're going to want to look to see what Mars aspects are happening. So if Mars is in Leo, has some trines to Jupiter or Saturn, Pluto, Neptune, there's going to definitely have some very interesting other layers to this. And so, of course, if you have your Mars Leo and you're interested in any readings with me, feel free to put down in the comment down below, and also look down below for my website and all the different things to book with me there. So with that being said, that is the Mars Leo. I'd love to hear your Mars Leo stories, what that's been like for you as well. So feel free to put that down below in the comments too. And also, if you're interested in any of my more videos, make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, all those things. And then I will see you in the next part. We're going to talk about what it means to have your Mars in the 5th house. Okay, so we have Mars in the 5th house. So the 5th house is this very creative space in the chart. It is related to all things that are fun, that are joyous, that are speculative. So when it comes to Mars in this space of the house, as well as kind of Mars Leo, because Mars Leo has a little bit more of these also significations, but not to the extreme that Mars in the 5th house does. Mars in the 5th really is about fighting for having fun, right? I said that earlier with Mars Leo, but there can definitely be some very interesting hobbies that are done with a Mars Leo or a Mars in the 5th house. Hobbies, things that are fun, things that are romantic, things that are joyous for them, things that are creative. Mars in the 5th is going to have a very interesting relationship with children and children dynamics. So children dynamics within themselves. So you can see Mars in certain alignments in the 5th house being really great creative writers, really great advocates for children and writers for children, and just creating video games for children, creating art. There's a lot of desire for Mars in the 5th house to create something, and their motivation is to really show the world who they are, and also really just have fun with it, just to create joy, to have joy be their guiding light, right? Joy is really, really important, and little moments of like glimmers of hope are really something that all 5th house placements really need to really focus in on, and that's really how they guide themselves, is through their own kind of light and inspiration, and what really makes them get up in the morning and say, this life is worth living. This life is worth, fighting for. It's worth having fun and enjoying myself. And sometimes that can be on the extreme level of, going really deep into partying and gambling and really things that are speculative and fun and enjoyable. But there's also this thing with Mars in the fifth house that really need to speak on, that is about, addictions and addictive kind of searching for things and really trying to fulfill that inner child desire to really connect and create something really beautiful within this world. And sometimes anything in excess, whether it's good or not for you, it will inevitably be bad. And there's a lot about making sure that you are not overdoing it with Mars in the fifth house, for a desire to have fun, right? So they almost can sometimes be so focused on having fun and following that joy and finding that joy, and really working within fun and enjoyable and party spaces, that they're almost getting lost in that, and they're not really seeing themselves clearly, because they're only seeing themselves through the lens of alcoholism and or partying and or different other things that are not allowing them to see themselves clearly, but it's allowing them to give them that temporary joy. So there's a thing with the Mars in the fifth that always speaks to the desire for joy and consistent joy. So if they can learn how to specifically connect to their own joy and their own happiness and their own kind of light, and just be able to connect to that and let that guide them, their own identity of what they really care about and what they find really enjoyable, not what's artificial, not what's what's given to us around us to distract us. It's very much about, okay, what are we doing that is really lighting us up in the morning and wants us to go after what we want to. So Mars, obviously in different signs, is going to play out very differently. So if you have your Mars in in a Martian sign, right, like Aries or Scorpio, it's going to have a very powerful support here. Mars in Aries in the fifth, I said this a little bit earlier, would be like a child coach, essentially, kind of a motivator for children. That's also just Mars in the fifth house in general can have that, but Mars in Aries, I think, has a lot more on like life coaching and childlike support and motivation, and going after really creating something new that your child didn't have, like your inner child didn't have, and really kind of pioneering a new thought for children, just in general, like really being able to create something new for the children of the next generation. That's a lot of what we see with the fifth house there. Mars and Scorpio in the fifth, this is where you'll definitely see more of a addictive personality, and kind of getting falling into those kind of identity-seeking behavior that is pretty much riddled with alcoholism, drugs, video games, things like that. But at the end of the day, Mars Scorpio, ultimately, once it regains its power, is a lot about being able to then really create a really whole and fully healed version of why it's doing what it's doing. It's really, Mars Scorpio is a lot about being very deeply motivated for getting rid of all the toxicity. But to do that, they have to get into really toxic situations pretty early on, and then be able to really see the way out of that through empowerment and through really reaching rock bottom in certain avenues. So in the fifth house, like I said, it's about creativity, children. Maybe there could be a fear of losing their own child, and or just fear of just losing their own inner child, and that whole kind of process there. But ultimately, it's about fighting for that child as well. So you could also see Mars and Scorpio in the fifth being a child detective. Sounds so strange, but like a child detective, or like a child lawyer could also be a part of this too. But this is also more like pediatrician could also be there. Pediatrician, that's also like Mars Virgo there. Mars Gemini has that too, but Mars Gemini is much more on like the childhood writer in the fifth, but really wanting to, another coaching one here, Mars Gemini, really coaching people, coaching children, writing something that is really for children with Mars and Gemini and a Mercury sign, and then Mars and Virgo. That's where there's going to be way more of the surgeon stuff. Like this is very much surgeon energy. Same with Mars Scorpio in the fifth, but Mars Virgo in the fifth is like very much wanting to improve children's health. So even like a children's gym teacher could be a big part of this too, or just someone who is just really wanting to. And the thing is too, like I want you to look at these analogies that I'm kind of pulling and really see how they can also be kind of teased out in other ways. So for example, with the Mars Virgo in the fifth, with it being like a gym teacher, that's really about, you know, trying to improve children and stuff like that. It can go in a lot of different ranges of stuff where it's all about the Mars Virgo in the fifth is a lot about the individual being able to ultimately use their own planning and their own sort of consistency of routine to help their own light and their own inner child and what they really feel like is valuable to them and what was valuable to them as a child. You'll typically see that with fifth house planets, is that's where they'll really be motivated. And so Mars Virgo, there's a lot about improving upon how to more quickly get to sense of joy. That's a lot of what you'll tend to see there. Mars in a Venus ruled sign, so either Taurus or Libra. Libra is very much, this is another like courthouse, like child custody type of thing, but also needing to understand the relationship with children. There's a lot of relationship learning with Mars and Libra in general. As we'll get to that with Libra season. But Mars in Libra in the fifth has a unique story around really creating harmony within their relationships and within like the inner child of each other. So think of this as that imagery of those two like sculpted things that are like two people that are like head down facing each other, but then on the inside there's these two children that are facing one another and really trying to connect. That's kind of what Mars Libra in the fifth is about. Is that ability to truly connect and find the way to create peace within its like conversations with one another, right? Within its harmony. Mars Taurus in the fifth, this is going to be a gambler. This is going to be someone who has some very interesting financial decisions that they're making. Very much so. Like, this is just something that, I mean, they can make a crap ton of money through the stock market. And that's another thing. The fifth house is about speculation and stocks and playing the markets and learning those things, and investing in a way that isn't necessarily like a long, steady kind of drive, but more of a, it can be, but more of a speculatory, like, oh, I understand the system. I understand how to make money through art, through creativity, through flipping things as well. You can see that with Mars Taurus in the fifth, is like flipping things from a financial point of view to make a quick buck, right? Going and getting stuff that is physically worn down and kind of improving it. That's also kind of Mars Capricorn, but Mars Capricorn is a little bit more on the specifically business side of things. Mars Taurus just really wants to make money. So that's those two. Mars and Leo, I would say just watch the Mars and Leo portion, because that just doubles up on a lot of the significators there. When you have Mars in its own, Mars and Leo in the fifth house, it kind of doubles up on the desire for really, 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 really creating a inner world that is very joyful and not taking everything so personally, but knowing that you're creating something really, really, really special to you, and knowing the power of your own personal story, your own personal light, your own personal desires, and following that, understanding that. Mars Cancer in the fifth, this is going to be the one who uses their family as a creative outlet, the one who is able to create a sense of safety. This is the one that's probably going to be more of the caretaker for the family, obviously, but more so for their children. They could be having some interesting things with adoption, interesting relationship with the family's children, or just children within the family as well. Not necessarily like their children, but just like children in the family, protecting of the family. It's a very interesting one. This is like protecting the family being like the head of the household type of thing, but needing to be the one that like leads a new direction. It's really interesting. Mars and Cancer in the fifth that's a really interesting one. And there definitely is some like desire to show up and to show their family who they are, but there's a kind of a switch there that needs to be kind of understood when to do that. Mars Cancer has its own thing. If you have Mars Cancer, check that video out, because it's a lot to say there on Mars Cancer. Anywho, let's see what else. Mars in a Jupiter ruled sign. So this is gonna be Mars in Sag, Mars in Pisces. Mars in Pisces in the fifth, this is definitely gonna be the starving artist, the one that is really using interestingly enough, using alcoholism and or meditation and or spirituality and or drugs or anything that alters their mind to create something new, to create different art, to create different forms of art. And it's about them being very creative and very spiritual, and how they're going after what they want. Mars and Pisces is a very interesting energy. We're going to get to that one eventually. But they have a very unique perspective on why they're doing what they're doing. And in the fifth house, it almost doesn't make sense to them why they're doing what they're doing, but they're just having fun. And it's about finding that joy in like a sea of confusion and a sea of just not making sense of things, honestly. And then Mars and Sag in the fifth. This is once again more of a party. This is more of a party animal than I would say Mars and Leo in the fifth or Mars and Aries. The other two fire signs have a little bit more of a limit that they kind of naturally understand, and they kind of know when to necessarily turn it off. Mars Leo might not if Jupiter's there too, but Mars in a Jupiter ruled sign in Sag is going to be really inspiring, really proud, really loud with what it's doing and why it's doing it. And so this is where there could be a lot of excess. This is another one that could definitely have a lot of excess spending, excess gambling, excess, things. But also at the same time, there could be a very interesting cultural relationship that they need to be able to really integrate into their identity. So there's definitely some cultural desires that they have. Mars Sag typically has that, but in the fifth, it's about them integrating that into the relationship, potentially with the father as well, and fighting for their place with the father or against the father. That's another thing with Mars in the fifth. I should just kind of say that, like, Mars in the fifth can have like a interesting relationship with the father, and whatever they consider authority to be, because ultimately they're learning to be their own authority. Mars in the fifth really wants to be its own authority, its own light. And Mars in Sag in the fifth is almost like doing it in a way that's like, I'm doing too much, I'm trying too much, I'm doing all these things, I'm trying to find the answers of who I am. Same with Pisces, but Pisces finds the answers of who they are through kind of tripping into it and falling into it. Sag is more like explorative. They're both explorative, but Sag is more explorative with an idea in mind. Pisces has more of a feeling in mind and more of a kind of a vibe in mind, and they just kind of follow that, and they can get lost in that and pulled into other stuff. So it's all about discernment for those Mars Jupiters in the fifth house for sure. Now, when we get to Mars in a Saturn world sign, so Capricorn Aquarius, this is where we get some interesting ones here. Mars Capricorn in the fifth. Both of these, Saturn in the fifth, we'll get to this when we do Saturn in the fifth for sure, but Mars in Capricorn and Mars in Aquarius in the fifth have a desire to really create a long-standing goal of, like, this is where I see this like very small flame that they inevitably build over time. And through that flame being built, the confidence is kind of built. There's a lot of creative work projects that Mars Capricorn would have. Mars Capricorn has a lot that they want to accomplish and do and win. And a lot of it is long-term goals. So this is like someone who would, once again, kind of, I'm speaking on like pediatrics as well, but someone who would want to make a business around helping children. Mars in Aquarius, however, has more of a sociological kind of desire. So there's more of a desire to really advocate for children, and that's how they will be able to see themselves. So a lot of the time you'll see with Mars and Aquarius, in general, there's going to be more of a kind of like, I need to see it from all different sides of view. I want to kind of connect with all different avenues of who I could have been or who I was as a child, and kind of see all parts of myself and then advocate for that, speak on that. Versus Mars in Capricorn has a little bit more of a stern, really focused goal in mind of why they are creating what they're creating, why they're doing what they're doing. And there's a lot of hidden stuff behind who they are when it comes to a Capricorn Mars in the fifth, like why they're doing what they're doing. Their motivations are very, although it's Capricorn, it's not necessarily hidden. Their motivations take time to show up to them, why they're doing it, why they're motivated by it. And during that Saturn return, they're definitely going to have a very interesting conversation around their goals and why they went after what they went after and things of that nature. And then Mars and Aquarius, like I said, there's a lot of advocacy. You can see that where they want to do something for a cause, for a bigger purpose, for humanity, for advancing humanity. And so they could do some very out of the box art as well. Mars Capricorn is more of like an artist that is very kind of muted and contained, obviously. And so there's a lot of different things with this Mars placement that I think are very very interesting. I think Mars in the fifth has such a drive to be seen and be seen for who it is, and not really necessarily break apart all the different archetypes and different ideas and different identifications. It's about really learning through its own actions of what it's identifying as opposed to the actions of others, right? Obviously, Mars in Aquarius, Mars in Libra is going to have a little bit different story with that, but for the most part, Mars in the fifth is a lot about using their own pitfalls, their own issues, their own things they've tripped up on or they succeeded with, and be able to really report back to themselves and see who they are in that process. It's about that part of us that figures out who we are as we kind of trip and fall, and that's part of the learning process, which is why the sun does really well in Aries, because it understands that process of the identity is not going to be really fixed. It's going to always kind of change, and it's part of the growing process is getting up and continuing to try something new and grow your identity. And so Mars in the fifth ultimately has that desire to grow its identity, grow what it can be, grow different parts of itself. And I see that imagery of like kind of this like flowers growing out of its chest and really learning to nurture itself in certain ways, right? Obviously, different Mars are going to have different desires of how they nurture themselves, but ultimately being able to help nurture itself from the inside out so it can really create a really beautiful life coming from its own light. And like I said, taking that little tiny spark or little tiny light or little tiny seed and really working towards a goal or towards just accomplishing things that help that seed or that light or that flame grow. And so that's really what Mars is in the fifth house. The fifth house is very much about that kind of seeding, birthing process. And so there's a lot of stuff here where you'll see that there's an overarching theme of birthing something new, exploring who you are, exploring new parts of you. And I think the Mars in the fifth house, Mars in Leo, has a lot to learn throughout that process. And birthing is never an easy thing. It's a very vulnerable thing, as well as a very traumatic thing as well. It's a very eighth house moment as well, but it's also very beautiful. It's a lot of beauty in creating something that comes from your own creative endeavors and comes from your own heart and your soul and your baby, right? When you create a piece of art, a lot of artists say that it's like their child, right? And so it's about that awareness of what lights you up and using that as your motivation, both for Mars in Leo and Mars in the fifth. But Mars in the fifth has a little bit more of a focus upon that, how they're searching for that light, that spark, and being able to bring that out. And it's a really beautiful thing. I wish I had more Leo placements myself to be able to help with that kind of spark building and that constant kind of growth aspect in that. So with that being said, thank you for watching this video. Mars and Leo, Mars in the fifth house has been a really, really fun video here for me. I appreciate you for watching through with this. And also, of course, if you're interested in any of my videos, feel free to look down below. There is a playlist down there that's going to have all the different videos I've done prior to this, as well as all the videos I will do after this series. And so make sure to check that out, subscribe to my channel, like my videos, comment, all those things. And I want to hear your story about what it was like to have your Mars in Leo or Mars in the fifth house, what that's been like for you. And yeah, I appreciate you guys. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.